Good morning, Year 5, and welcome back to our second lesson on position and direction. To begin today, I'd like you to try to do some converting of measurements for our maths warm-up. When you're ready, move on to the next slide to check that your answers are correct. And here are your answers. If you were finding this tricky, remember a place value grid is a really useful tool for helping you to do some converting. So, as I said today, it's our second lesson, and today our learning objective is to use reflection, and that's so we are able to answer questions like this. In order to do this, we're going to need to recap on some key skills. Our first one is to be able to recognise whether a shape has been reflected accurately, and our key skill 2 is to reflect a shape in a mirror line. So let's remind ourselves of some important parts. You'll see here I've put a question. What is this called? Okay, if you're with anyone, you could have a little chat about this. If not, have a think. This is our mirror line. Okay, and it's a dotted line that you'll see on a grid. And I've put another question here. What equipment can we use to help us to find and draw reflection? Well, we can use a mirror to help us to do that. So let's start with key skill 1. Has the shape on the grid been reflected in the mirror line correctly? Okay, so we need to look. Here's our mirror line, and our shape has been reflected. Now, how can we check that it's been reflected? We can check by looking either in the mirror, if we have one. If we don't, we can also look at the squares between the mirror line and the vertices of the shape. If you remember, the vertices from yesterday's lesson are these points here where the sides meet. So I can see here our vertice is 1 square away from the mirror line, and that is correct here, 1 square also. If we go through, this one is 1, 2, 3 squares away from the mirror line, and this one is also 3 squares. We can check our height by counting the squares down, and again checking along to make sure that this number of squares away from the mirror line is exactly right. So that's what we can do to check our answers. In this case, this shape is correctly reflected. Let's have a look at this shape now. Has that been correctly reflected in the mirror line? And how do we know? Well, for this shape to be correctly been reflected, it would be along here, and I'm going to try and draw it, so bear with me. It would be here, 1 square away from the mirror line, and it would be exactly the same length and exactly the same depth. And let's finish off making the rectangle. That's not too bad. We're drawing it on the screen. Quite pleased with that. Okay, and now we can see that our vertices are directly opposite to the other shape. So it is now reflected here in the mirror line correctly. This one here is correct. This one here is incorrect. So the answer to this was no, it's incorrect because it is not correctly reflected as the vertices of the rectangle are not in the same position from the mirror line. I'd like you to have a go at this one. So I've got a shape. I'd like you to have a think. Has it been correctly reflected? Think, would you be able to explain how you know? When you're ready, unstop the video and I'll give you the answer. Yes, this has been correctly reflected in the mirror line. I can see this by the distance in the squares from the mirror line and the vertices of the shape. I can also use a mirror to check that I'm correct. Have a go at this one. When you're ready, unstop the video and you listen to my explanation. The rectangle on this grid has been incorrectly reflected. I know this because from the mirror line, this vertices here is 2 squares. But from the mirror line to this vertices, it's 3 squares. So it's incorrectly reflected. How did you do? Let's have a look now at key skill 2, which is to reflect a shape and coordinates in a mirror line. So for this, we need to look carefully at where our vertices are and use the same squares. The squares are so helpful with this. So for this vertices here, I'm able to count 2 squares. So my shape should begin here. Then we're going to look at this vertices and so on, and copy the shape carefully. If I move this, I have done this here for you, and you can check that I've done it correctly by counting the number of squares from the vertices. Okay. We can also reflect points in a mirror line. It doesn't have to be just a shape. And really, we're transferring our skills from using coordinates and reflecting. So if we look at point A, again, I can count from the mirror line 2, 3, 4 squares, and I am able to reflect that point. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, 4. And point A is reflected on the coordinates grid. There. Let's try B. Again, I'm going to use the squares. Come on, circle. Okay, and I can see it's 1 square from the mirror line. So I just count 1. I'm along x-axis exactly the same. Oh, I've moved it slightly now. Let's move it back. And the y-axis. So it's now reflected correctly. Let's have a look at C. C is 2 squares. 1, 2 from the mirror line. So I can plot my reflection like so. And D is 1 square from the mirror line. There. Now all of those points have been correctly reflected on the mirror line. Let's go on to our Show Me activities. Now, with the questions and answers that I've posted on the website for you, the silver Show Me questions can be found. So I'd like you to take some time to have a go at reflecting the shape and the coordinates, and then come back and find the answers. So here is our answer. For the first, for reflecting the shape, it's really important that we make sure that it doesn't look exactly the same up here. We've got to remember that the point is nearest to this point here, or this vertices here is nearest to the mirror line. It's not up here. And I know you will have had a go at these points, and I'm going to give you the answers now. And there we go. I've labelled them A, B, C and D for you clearly. How did you get on? So what I'd like you to do now, please, is to have a go at bronze and silver. Now, bronze and silver, you're asked whether the shapes have been correctly reflected. Now, I've put here on the screen a tick and a cross. You can just tick or cross whether you think it's correct or incorrect, and move on to silver. When you've done both, could you check your answers, please? Make sure you haven't made any mistakes, correct any mistakes that you have made, and then you're ready to move on to the gold activity. Okay, and this one is looking again at whether the shapes have been reflected correctly. Susan says, I've reflected by making sure the shapes in the same place in the mirror line. Do you agree? Has she got that correct? Please remember to use the talk scaffolds to help structure your answers. You're now ready to move on to the gold, platinum and emerald questions. There's quite a few set for you today. Hope you like them. Don't forget, please, to mark your answers, highlight with your yellow pen. Check your answers. I would like you to reflect. Take a few moments to think what you're really pleased with today. That's the end of our lesson for today. I will do another video for you next week. Hope you enjoyed it and look forward to seeing you soon, Year 5. Bye-bye.